Good morning, Rabotai. We want to speak today, and maybe speak this in a few parts, about the mitzvah of Kitvei HaKodesh, the mitzvah of keeping works of Torah holy. And I spoke about this in the podcast. Those of you who want to be on the Magen Avot, look it up. Magen Avot daily podcast. It's not on Torah Anytime, but the Torah Anytime listeners could find that on Magen Avot daily podcast. That I spoke over there about a very special minhag that was in a few communities around the world. That after Shavuot, the day after Shavuot, there would be a celebration of burying of the Geniza. That means that the Sefer, if there was Sefer Torah that were old, if there was papers of Torah, ripped books that had to be in Geniza, so there was a whole celebration. In one of the places, they would gather in Morocco. They would gather the different places in a bag, and they would auction off the bag. And they would say who has the zechut of this bag, and then they would go to the cemetery, they would bury, and then they would have a celebration afterwards of that they honored the Torah and they did kavod Torah. We don't have that nowadays, but people have such an abundance of Kitvei HaKodesh, of photocopies of Torah that's lying around, and sometimes they're just left on the floor, right, Pinchas, and sometimes they're left in areas that it is not kavod for the Kitvei HaKodesh, that unfortunately they come to a disgrace. They come lidei bizayon, and it's so important to invest time and energy to make sure that we properly honor our Torah, because when you honor the Kitvei HaKodesh, then you are also honoring Hashem. Yesterday, I read a teshuvah written to the Rambam in Pe'er Hador, Teshuvah Siman Zayin. The Rambam was asked, listen to this, about a minhag that they had, that people selling a talit, they wanted to sew onto the talit a pasuk. They wanted to sew a pasuk, Siu Sharim La Shechem V'yinasu B'tchei Olam. It's a nice thing to sew onto the talit. So the Rambam blasts them. He says it's absolutely wrong, and he gives three reasons. The first reason says, really, according to halakha, you're not supposed to write more than 3 pesukim if it's not a full book. That's one thing. We're not going to get into that halakha now. Based on that, Rav Ovadia Yosef says that a sofer shouldn't write pito maketoret, right? Even though we have a lot of pito maketoret, he says it's not right. He says it's not right for a sofer to write it. Once it's written, you could buy it, but it's not right for a sofer to write it, because you're not supposed to write only one parasha. You have to write the whole Sefer Torah. We don't, the whole Chumash at least. We don't follow that. The minhag is to be lenient, like other opinions, that it's in order to, if there's a purpose, then it's allowed. But then the Rambam says another reason. He says, tzitzit are able to go into the bathroom, right? Talit katan goes into the bathroom. Even talit gadol, according to main halakha, would be allowed to go in the bathroom. We don't do it because it's a special something we use for the tefillah. But a talit is tashmish mitzvah, it's not tashmish kedusha. And therefore, says the Rambam, what's going to happen, you're going to write these pesukim, it's going to come to bizayon, it's going to come to disgrace. And therefore, the Rambam says it's not a good thing to write these studies. There's a third reason I'm not going to get into now, but he says that it's going to come to disgrace. And Shulchan Aruch in Yoredei Siman Resh Pe Gimel Sif He writes that a person should not write pesukim on his talit, and the reason is because it's going to come lidei bizayon. So all the more so, if a person is going to print some type of paper that has Torah and just give it out to people, and he knows the people are going to throw it out, not supposed to do that. It's not supposed to do that. It's going to come to bizayon. Not only that, I saw one Rabbanit, her name was Rabbanit Rothberg. She used to give shiurim in Bnei Brak a long time ago. The Chazon Ish told her, don't print things that people are going to look at because it's going to come to disgrace. Nowadays, we don't do that. A lot of people print Divrei Torah and they give them out. But we have to be careful afterwards that it doesn't come to a point of disgrace. So the question is like this. There's a lot of magazines that people buy. There's a lot of newspapers that people buy. And there's a lot of different periodicals. and they're left with all of them. What are they supposed to go through? Pull out the Divrei Torah on each one. First of all, it's going to take them a long time, and second of all, where are they gonna, they're gonna have bags of Geniza every few months. It's very hard for them. So what? It's also very hard to find places to bury the Geniza. So Rabbi Elyashiv was asked this question. And Rabbi Elyashiv said the following. He said that there was a very big question that the great Acharonim dealt with hundreds of years ago. Was by a printing press. They would always print a test copy. It was called Kortikons. They would always print a test copy, and at the end of the day, they had a lot of different books by the printing press that they didn't know what to do with. So the poskim have different suggestions that maybe something that was printed and not designated for kedusha doesn't have holiness to it. Some said the following. Some say the first. Just saying that it's kadosh without learning from it first doesn't have any importance to it. Because hazmana lav miltahi, just designating is not enough. But the Sefer Masad Binyamin had a very important chidush. He said that even if you designate it, even if you are going to learn from it eventually, but you're not designating it for kedusha, that's not its purpose. The whole way that something gets its kedusha is through hazmana, is through dedicating and learning from it. But if it's not dedicated for kedusha, even if you learn from it, that is not holy. And therefore, he said, so Rabbi Elyashiv wants to take the Masad Binyamin and say, maybe by newspapers, since you're not designating the newspaper as a sefer, it's a newspaper, that's the main purpose of the newspaper. It has some Divrei Torah in it, but it's not designated as a sefer. So they never had intention of making it kadosh, and according to this, you'd be able to not dispose of it in a garbage because that is bizayon, but at least wrap it up in a non-see-through bag and put it in the recyclable. That is the best honor you could give to newspapers. And he says, according to that might be a solution for newspapers. Not everybody agrees with this. Some say no, it's a problem, and you'd have to sit literally and take out the pages. Now, that is all in regards to regular Divrei Torah. But if it has the name of Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke or Adnut, then there's a prohibition, Mina Torah, written in Parashat Re'eh, Lo ta'asun ken l'Adonai Elohechem. It says by Avodah Zarah, Ve'ibadtem et shema me'al aretz. You should obliterate the name of Avodah Zarah. And then the pasuk writes, "Ve'lo ta'asu ken l'Adonai Elohechem." Don't do that to Hashem's name. It means there's a prohibition to erase Hashem's name. I mentioned on Friday night, for those of you who were here, that in the city of Miknes in the 1950s, they had a very big question that they rented out a Bet HaKnesset, and they rented out a property, and they wrote on the wall a beautiful pasuk, "Shiviti Adonai le'negdi tamid," but they wrote the name of Hashem Yud Ke Vav Ke. And now it was time to go. The Arab wanted his property back. How are they going to raise the name of Hashem? So they asked the chief rabbi then, Rabbi Yoshua Berdugo, what to do. Yoshua Berdugo was a lion. He was a chief rabbi in Morocco at the time. He said, I'm too busy to deal with it. It's a big question. I'm too busy to deal with it. With all of the pressing cases in Bedin, I can't deal with it now. So Rabbi Shalom Misas took care of this psak. Rabbi Shalom Misas wrote a teshuvah in Tivuat Shamesh, and he says it's better because there's two options. Either you leave it to a goy, and the goy might disgrace the name, but at least you're not doing it, or you do it in an honorable way. So Rabbi Shalom Misas, after a long discussion, he says maybe you could cut out the name, and it'll disintegrate on its own. So it's called a grama. It's called an indirect action. He has over there teshuvah back and forth between him and Rabbi Baruch Avraham Toledano. Not Rabbi Rafael Baruch Toledano, Rabbi Baruch Avraham Toledano. They were cousins. He was a contemporary of his, and they went back and forth on this. It was a very big question. Erasing the name of Hashem is a potential isur de oraita. So if you ever have the name of Hashem written anywhere, you have to cut it out, or you have to make sure that you put it in a proper place, that there's going to be Geniza. That means Bir Konim of Birkat Hamazon. That means all of these type of things have to be put in a place. Now, a Sefer Torah that is old, it's written in the Gemara Masechet Megillah Daf Chavav Amud Bet. You have to put it inside a earthenware pot, kli cheres, and you bury it by a Talmid Chacham, because that is the honor of the Talmid Chacham. You should have a Sefer Torah by him. The poskim say that nowadays, if you want to have plastic also makes sure that the Sefer Torah doesn't disintegrate so fast, and you could do that. And if you don't have it, it's for the honor of the Talmid Chacham. But if you don't have a Talmid Chacham there, you bury it on its own. That's only Sefer Torah that needs such an important type of burying. Other papers don't need to literally have a vessel, a receptacle around it. As long as you put them in plastic and then they are buried, it's okay. But once again, that is for all papers of Divrei Torah, all papers that have kedusha on it. You have to be careful. Anything that is tefillin, tzitzit, mezuzah. I'm sorry, not tzitzit. Tzitzit doesn't go to Geniza at all. You can put it in the garbage as long as you put it in a bag that is non-see-through, because it's tashmish mitzvah. Nizrakin, as long as you're not disgracing it, it's okay. Put it in the recyclable if they allow it. So what you do is that your all of these things, tefillin, Sefer Torah, that has to be put in a special place in order to bury. But papers, they have to be put in the Geniza in the most honorable place possible. And once again, as we said, by magazines, you could rely on the fact of putting in the recyclable and throwing them out. Chazaku Baruch.